Hello everybody, today we shall learn how to play against French defense. French defense starts with e4, e6 and we are going immediately to center, so d4 for white. And now the most common move for black is d5, and most players will play d5. But let me comment shortly what happens if some players play some other moves. Some players will play c5. Uh, After c5, I recommend that we go d5, so not allowing uh, to exchange pawns and get black bishop to be active on c5. So we push d4. If instead black plays d6, uh, we will play a knight f3. So we will play developing move on the king side, knight f3. And actually knight f3 will be the most common move in those lines which are not main line. Other options are b6. If black plays b6, we will again play knight f3, developing on the king side. If black decides to go c6, we will again play knight f3. If black plays knight f6, now we will not play knight f3 because our pawn on e4 is under attack, but we will simply push the pawn e5, chasing that knight on f6 further. We step back. If instead black plays knight e7, we again play our developing move knight f3. So we are strong in the center, further protecting the center with the knight. So these are dream first three moves for white, e4, d4, and knight f3 if we are allowed to play this. So also after bishop e7, if black plays bishop e7, we will again play knight f3. Okay, I step back and we now finally go to the main line of the French defense, which is d5. So actually e6 prepared d5, and actually you can expect that most players will play this. And now we are not going to play knight knight f3 because our if pawn is also under attack. We can play e5 and in most as we already played earlier when we were chasing a knight on f6, but now there is no knight on f6, so we will not play now e5. We will play e5 in most lines later on, but at this point I recommend that we simply play developing move with another knight c3, which also protects our e4 pawn. So knight c3 will be our variation in this main line. Now black has many options. Actually, three of them are considered main lines, but and we will now see also some other ones. First, we will shortly consider two moves. So knight c6 move. if black plays knight c6, knight c6, attacking our pawn on d4, but it is protected by the queen. Actually, in this variation, we immediately go with e5 with advanced variation. As I already announced that we shall frequently play this e5 move in French defense. So we comment this move very shortly because we are going to see many ideas later on in more frequent lines. And we will also shortly comment c6 move if some beginner players play it's c6 move. This is not a very best option for black already. We already have some lead in the development here. And here I recommend that we again simply play developing move with another knight f3. Okay, and we step back, and before going for three main moves in this position for black, we will first see what happens if black plays immediately c5. c5 will be the idea here in French defense for black, but going immediately with c5 is probably not the best move at this point. So if some black players decide go immediately with c5, we will now see more deeply how to play, because here we already have a decent advantage in the opening at already here. So we shall simply take the pawn. So we will not calculate some other variations. We are going to simply take the pawn here. So sorry, but not with this pawn. We are actually going to take d5. So this is important. We now play e takes d5. E takes d5 is actually the move. Taking on c5 is not recommended because black will have strong bishop already on c5, which can go to b6 later and so on. So this is the move. E takes d5. And now there are two main moves for black, which players regularly play here. Players regularly take one of the pawn, either c takes d5 or e takes d5. We shall now first see this variant if c takes d4. This is already a mistake for black, and we have a huge advantage here. And how we need to continue? We need to develop first our bishop with the check. So bishop b5 check, and there are several options how black can stop us. And actually, whatever black plays, we are already in a huge advantage here. If knight c6, this is the worst possible option for black, because now we simply take the knight with the pawn, and we are actually a piece up here. and if black retakes with the pawn, we will further win the full rook with the bishop takes c6 check. So we are forking the king and the rook, and we are winning the rook here. Other options for black here are b6, to play b6 here, but everything is actually losing. In b6 we play c7, discovered check, winning the queen, and we are in a huge advantage here. If black decides to go king e7, sorry, I didn't step back. If black decides to go king to e7, we will further develop another bishop f4 move. If black plays a6, attacking our bishop, we will actually not we are not going to retreat the bishop. We are actually going to take with the pawn on b7. Actually, again, discovered check and winning the rook at least. If black decides to play queen to b6, we again have discovered check, c takes b7, discovered check. Also, there is nothing different if black plays queen to a5. We again have this beautiful move, c takes b7, discovered check. Okay, and the last option is if black takes our knight on c3. So if d pawn takes c3, but again we will take on b7 with discovered check. So this was really the bad play by black, and actually bishop to c6 is huge mistake after previous mistake by taking with the pawn on d. Already taking the pawn on d4 was a mistake, and now knight c6 is a huge blunder. So knight c6 is not an option at all. Better options for black here are knight d7, but we will simply take the pawn on d4 now, and actually we are a pawn up and also a huge lead in the development. And similarly, if black plays bishop to d7, stopping the check this way, we will again take with the queen on d4. Our bishop is protected. Our bishop on b5 is protected by the knight, and so we are again in a very good position here. So we step back to move number 4 for black. So taking on d4 is not a good move, but taking on d5 is better option for black here. But we again have and will play bishop b5 check. As in previous line, we again develop our bishop with the tempo. And now bishop d7 is bishop d7 or knight c6 are good moves for black and frequently played once, so we will cover those two moves. If bishop d7, first what we are going to play, we are developing the queen with the check. So queen e2 check will be played now. And there are several options for black. Frequently played lines are knight e7. After knight e7, we simply take the pawn on c5. You can now see that black cannot retake with the bishop. Now knight on e7 is on the diagonal of the bishop, and so we win another pawn here. If black stops the check with the queen, queen e7, we will not hurry with queen exchange here, but we will rather play developing move bishop e3. Bishop e3 protects also our d4 pawn, and we play like this. And finally, if black stops the check with the bishop, so bishop e7, we will simply take the pawn, but pawn on d5 is free to take, so knight takes d5 is the move now. Okay, we step back to move number 5 for black, and we see what happens if instead black plays knight c6, stopping the check this way, but we are again in a decent advantage here. Maybe still not completely clearly winning, but after knight c6, we will take the pawn on c5, although black can recapture that with the bishop, and actually but taking with the bishop will not be maybe the best move here. Okay, let us see what options black has. Frequently played moves in this position are a6, attacking our bishop. In this way, we are going to take the knight on c6 with the check. Black needs to retake, b takes c6, and we are playing developing move bishop e3, protecting our pawn on c5, and we are actually in a good shape here, and already we won a pawn. So I step back. If instead of playing a6, black plays bishop to e6, we will again play our developing move bishop e3, which protects a c5 pawn. Also, after knight f6 for black, we will again play bishop e3. And there are two interesting moves also for black here, which black frequently plays, but which are actually huge mistakes. If black decides to play d4 with the pawn attacking our knight, this is already even bigger mistake, because we have queen e2 check. Here, and later we can jump with our knight on e4, and we are knight e4 will also protect our pawn on c5, and so we are just in a good position here. And finally, it seems that actually the best move for black is simply to take a c5 pawn immediately, that we cannot protect that pawn, but that is even a bigger mistake. So amateur players frequently play this, but this is a mistake, because we can now simply take d5 pawn with huge pressure. So this is already almost winning for white here. Okay. We will step back to the main lines. So we will step back to move number 3 for black now. So c5 was not the best move already for black here. c5 is not the key move here, and if white knows how to play, we already have a decent advantage here. Actually, here c5 was not the best on move number 3 for black. So we are going, as I already announced, to the main lines, and the main lines are first d takes e4. So if black decides to take on e4, this is one of the 3 possible main lines here in French defense. How we are going to continue this? Of course, we don't have much options. We will retake with the knight. So knight takes e4 will be our move here. What options does the black have? Black has actually many options. Many options are played by amateur players here, and also several by master players. So let me see some of them. So after now c5. So after now c5, we will retake, and we will retake with the knight. So we will not take with the pawn, but actually we will take with the knight. So knight takes c5 here in this position. We step back. If black plays b6, preparing c5, we will play the simply developing move knight f3, and we are in a good position here. If black plays f5, attacking our knight on e4, we will retreat to g3 square. Okay, we step back. If knight c6 by black, attacking our pawn on d4, it is protected, of course, by the queen, but we will further protect it and play developing move knight f3. Okay, we step back. If bishop to e7 is played by black here, we will again play developing move knight f3. So these were not very good options by black. We are now going to some more common options, but knight f6 is still not very good one. So knight f6 is a developing move, and actually but we will immediately exchange those knights with the tempo, with the check, and actually black will have one defender less here on the king side. And now if black recaptures with the pawn, so g takes f6, we will immediately go with developing our king side with knight f3. If instead queen takes on f6, knight f3 is also playable. But now maybe even better option is to go first with a bishop d3. So bishop d3, protecting both our d4 pawn and f2 pawn, and later we can play knight f3. Okay. We will step back. So if instead of knight f6 and other already seen moves, black plays either bishop to d7 or knight to d7. So developing on the queen side here. We will now cover those moves. Knight to d7 is actually the main line here, but bishop to d7 is also playable. So we now see the position after a bishop to d7. After bishop d7, we will play knight f3, again developing the knight. And now we cover actually we will cover only one move for black here, because we can, after a bishop to d7, we can expect bishop to c6. So the idea of the bishop to d7 was moving bishop to c6 and attacking our knights. So bishop c6 is played by the black, and we will simply protect our knight with bishop d3. So we play bishop d3. Bishop d3 will be common move here in French defense for white, rather than more passive move bishop e2. So bishop d3 is played. And now possible responses for black are: first, if bishop e7, so if bishop e7, I recommend that we also develop our bishop to f4. So bishop to f4 here. Okay. If black decides to develop the knight first, so knight f6, attacking our knight on e4 for the second time, we will again exchange those knights with the tempo, with the check. So knight takes f6, and if black takes with the pawn structure on the king side is already ruined, and king side is not developed well neither, and we will simply finish our development with the short castle here, and we are just in a good position as white here. We step back, and if instead black takes with the queen, which seems more logical, the pawn structure will not be ruined, but this is a blunder. Taking with the queen here is a huge blunder, because we have a very strong move, bishop g5, attacking that queen. And actually the queen is trapped. After bishop g5, queen is trapped. So black has no good options at all. We are winning already here. If frequently played moves here for black are queen g6, but we simply take the queen. And another try for black is bishop takes f3. Taking our knight and attacking our queen. But we have a strong option. We have queen d2, moving our queen to safety and also protecting our bishop on g5, and black has no more resources here, so we are already winning here. So knight f6 was not good move at all, and retaking here with the queen was even a bigger blunder here. So what should have a black plate on the sixth move? We shall now going to see. So we are stepping back here, and so on move number 6, black can play two moves. Either taking on e4, so immediately exchanging the bishop for the knight, so bishop takes e4. And after that, of course, we retake with our bishop. And now black has not much options at all, because this bishop attacks b7 square. So the best option is simply to push c6, and we can expect that black will play c6 here. I recommend that we play c3, protecting our pawn on d4. So c3 for white. And now if black plays bishop to e7, we will continue with queen e2, further putting the pressure on the e-file first. So we are in a good shape, in a good development. We do not hurry with the with castling. If instead black decides to develop knight d7 first, we have actually a nice developing move, bishop to f4. And finally, in this position, if black decides to play knight f6, attacking our bishop on e4, we have a nice retreat square on c2. So we retreat to c2, bishop c2. Okay, we will step back to the move number 6 for black. So if black doesn't take our knight, but instead plays knight to d7, now we are going to castle. Now we are going to wait for other moves for black. We first castle, short castle, and now if now bishop takes on e4, we will of course retake. With the bishop, and if black is not careful, but will play knight g to f6, we have free pawn here. Bishop takes b7, actually already huge advantage, because this is not just a free pawn, but king side is not developed and queen side is now ruined. This is already a huge advantage, positional advantage for white here. So the better option for so sorry. So of course the better option for black is simply to play c6, preventing us to take on b7. And now we will again go with strong bishops in the center, bishop f4. Okay. We step back. So instead of taking our knight on e4, other options for black are bishop e7. And here we are again going with the queen to the e file, queen e2. And if now knight g to f6, we will now retreat with the knight. We will now not take. Black now has a solid position, so we are not going to take on f6. So we are retreating with the knight to c3. Okay. I will now step back. To move number 4. So instead of bishop to d7, the main line is a knight to d7. So this is the main line in this position. We will simply continue our development again with knight f3. And if black now plays bishop to e7, we will finish our development with bishop to d3. And going back, if instead black goes with knight g to f6, as we have already seen, as long as we think that black is not developed well, we can exchange those knights. So black played knight g to f6, and we now take on f6 with the check. Now there are many options. There are actually 3 options to retake now, but there is no need for black to do anything else but to play the best move here. So we can expect knight takes f6 as the main line here, and we will finally now this opened also the file. Maybe it's not bad to protect our d4 pawn for the second time, although it is not attacked currently twice, but bishop to e3 is a nice developing move, and via 2 or 3 moves from the castling here, depending on the further play. Okay, I will step back and we will see the next main line here. So on the third move, we now covered option when this is the position. So we covered option when black takes with d pawn on e4. The second main line will be knight to f6. So we cover now this. As already seen in the introduction to this video, in some less known lines, we frequently will play advanced variation, and especially when we can play this with the tempo with chasing the knight. So here we will again play e5, attacking the knight on f6. There are 3 options for black here. The best one is with knight f to d7, but some other are also playable. So some players will play knight to g8 here. So we will play preventing move here. So we actually lead in a lead in the development, and we can now immediately play a3, preventing black's bishop from coming to b4, which will be actually the last main line when bishop immediately goes to b4. So a3 is recommended here. If instead knight goes to e4, well, we will simply take the knight. Black will, of course, take with the pawn, but that pawn on e4 now seems lost. We will easily put pressure on that pawn. But first we go with bishop to c4. We play strong developing a move in the center with the bishop. Bishop c4 is recommended here. And finally, we step back and cover the best option, the main line for black, knight f to d7. So knight f to d7 here. And so what to play now? The main line is f4, and I recommend f4 because if we don't put the pressure on the king side, black is good here actually. French defense is a solid defense for black, and it's easier to convert the advantage for white even when computer says that there is a certain advantage, but if that advantage is not huge, it's pretty difficult to convert anything and to win as a white here. And I recommend that we go with f4 here. Black also black also doesn't have much options. So the main line here is symmetrically on the queen side to attack with the pawn on c5, but let me cover first other options played frequently by black. If bishop b4, we will immediately go with h4 here. So we are immediately attacking on the king side with h4. If instead black goes with more passive, bishop e7, but controlling h4 square, we will continue our development with knight f3. And also, after some other passive moves like h6, for example, we will again continue with knight f3. And now we cover the main line c5 for black. After c5, I recommend that we again go with knight to f3 as in previous lines. Knight f3 is a good developing move, protecting also our pawn on d4, which is now attacked by the c pawn. It is also protected by the queen, but we will need queen for other purposes here in these variations, as we will see soon. So what can expect now by black? If now a6, I recommend that we go with knight to e2. Knight to e2. What is the purpose of this move? We further protect the d4 square, and if black captures, we will have a strong knight in the center protected by another knight, and also we can potentially play c3 if allowed on the next move if black doesn't take on d4. Okay, we step back and we see what happens if black goes bravely with the queen, putting further pressure on the d4 square. And now we will not protect anymore, but we will simply take on c5. And if knight takes, if black captures with the knight takes c5, we will simply pin that knight with the bishop to e3. So knight cannot move because queen will fall. So black now needs to be careful. If instead black recaptures with the bishop takes c4, we have a nice fork, not a winning material, but nice fork with the knight on a4. attacking the queen and the bishop, and we can at least win the bishop in many situations. No, black can prevent that by playing queen a5 check, but so black can play this with interesting variations further. We will probably stop that with c3, and then bishop can retreat, but it's an interesting position and some advantage for white here. Okay, I step back and we see another options for black. If black takes with c pawn on d4, so c takes d4, we will of course recapture with the knight here. And finally, the main line in this position is actually knight c6. So if black plays correctly, black will play knight c6, putting further pressure on d4 square, and this is now better option than putting pressure with the queen, and we decides to defend that with the developing move bishop e3. So we play bishop e3 here in this position. Okay, and finally we are stepping back. We are stepping back to the move. We are stepping back to the move number 3. And we see the last main line, which is bishop to b4. So we will see how to play after bishop b4. There are several options, but I recommend that we again go with advanced variation. Although we are not chasing the knight, but we need to do something with that pawn, obviously, because the defender of the pawn, the only defender of the pawn, knight on c3, is under attack. So we need to either take on d5 or to push to e5. I recommend e5 here. So the center is now locked, and we can put some pressure on the king side as we will, and black will try to play on the queen side. Okay, what are options for black now? So c5 is the main line, but let us see other options first. Let us see other options first for black here. If black decides to go with knight c6, this is not very good move because we are putting the knight in front of the c7 pawn, which is not very good in this position. We want to be active on the queen side. So if black plays now knight to c6, this is already a small mistake, and actually black doesn't know how to play the French defense if he plays knight to c6. We will again counterattack. We will immediately counterattack on the queen side, playing a3, attacking the bishop. Uh, and if bishop retreats to e7, we will continue with the developing move knight f3. And although material is equal, we are actually in a solid lead in the development here. If instead black retreats to a5, now that bishop cannot help on the king side anymore, so we will immediately put a pressure queen to g4. Queen to g4, and there are no good options for black. King to f8 is probably the best move, protecting a g7 square. And we will see that idea also later in some other variations. So it's not uncommon in this French defense that black plays king to f8, but this concrete position we are now seeing is already not very good for black. So it's not easy to convert for white here, but white is a solid lead in the development here. So we step back and we finally cover the position after black decides to take. So if black takes on a c3, we will of course retake with the b pawn with a solid position also for white. Okay, we step back and we see some other options for black. Instead of dubious knight c6, if black plays some other moves, let me see, b6. Some players starts with b6, preparing c5 later, but this is probably a bit too small. We can immediately attack on the king side with h4. So I recommend h4 here. And actually, after some other moves, let me step back and see, for example, queen to d7. Also, h4 is playable. So this is a common idea. If black is passive, we can immediately push h4, going for the attack on the king side. Okay. If black immediately takes on c3, we will of course retake with the b pawn. And finally, sorry. And finally, the best two options for black. So the main lines here are either a knight to e7, so immediately developing on the king side, trying to further to finish the development with the short castle, or as I already announced, going with c5. We will first cover this move knight e7. So if black plays a knight to e7, we will first again chase the bishop with a3 move. And now And now there are no much options for black. Actually, black has only one retreat square. So if bishop retreats to a5, we will simply push b4 with the tempo, and now we are stronger both on the queen side and on the king side. Instead, if black plays, which is the best option is simply to take on c3. We will of course retake with the pawn. B takes c3. And now black has several options too here. So if now black tries something like knight d7, we can immediately try our attack on the king side with queen g4. Okay, queen G. We have already seen queen G4 in some previous lines, and we will see also in some future lines. So this is a common idea. Queen G4, putting the pressure on G7 square. If instead knight to F5, knight f5 now protects g7 square. So maybe there is no point in playing with the queen. Also, maybe there is no point to play knight f3, which is on the desired diagonal for the queen, but instead in this position the very playable move is the one which is not frequently played in the opening, with the knight to the edge of the board. So knight h3 is actually recommended here. So in this concrete line, knight at h3 is actually a good solid move here. We step back. If instead knight g6, this is already a kind of mistake, because we can now play h4. It seems that we are losing. It seems that we are losing the pawn this way. But actually that is not an option. That is not the case. Taking with the knight on h4 is not an option because of the strong move again, queen g4. Of course, black can retreat to g6 and we are a pawn down, but we have an open line on the king side, and also we have queen and the rook here, and we are actually in a very strong attack now here. So h4 was playable. Strong pawn sacrifice here is recommended actually. Okay, let me step back. If instead black goes immediately with the short castle, This seems logical, but actually, with our pawn on e5, that king side is pretty weak, and we have immediately put another pressure with bishop to d3. So bishop d3 puts another pressure to black king, and actually very good position for white. A tricky opening is that French defense, as I already said. It's difficult to convert for white, but we know how to play. We need to put pressure on the king side and stop black's counterplay on the queen side. That's the main idea. Okay, let me step back. And now if black plays b6, we will immediately again go with queen g4, putting the pressure on the king side. And let me see some options for black here. If black decides going to bishop to a6, trying to exchange the bishops, but that was already blunder. Black didn't see that we will simply take on g7, and after rook rook g8 doesn't help because our pawn on g2 is protecting, and we can win another pawn on h7 actually. Okay, let me step back. So black cannot afford not protecting g7 square. If black decides to protect with knight to f5 here, so if knight to f5, we will simply put further pressure. We again play bishop to d3, attacking that knight, develop a defender of g7 square, and actually we can put further pressure on the king side here. Okay, I step back. If black plays king to f8, a strange move, but much better than short castle. In this position, this was not a mouse sleep. This is a really better option for black to protect a g7 this way than with short castle. So if black decides to protect this way, play king to f8. The further natural idea is to go knight to again to the edge of the board, knight h3, with the idea of saving f3 for the queen, and also with in some variant putting the knight in some variants putting the knight on f4 square. So knight h3 is a good continuation for white here. Okay, I have already said that I step back, and I have already said that short castle is not a good option here for black, and we will see now why. We have a huge pressure with bishop to d3 here. So bishop d3 should be played by white here. And actually we will see that there is no good defense for black at all here. If black decides to play knight f5, we actually continue with huge pressure with bishop to g5, attacking the queen. f6 by black is not playable because of our e5 pawn, and this is really a huge advantage, a huge attack for white, and with accurate play, white should be easily winning here. We step back. What else can black can try to play? Black can try to play c5, but this is an idea of the main line, but c5 is too late now. After c5, we again play bishop g5. So black shouldn't allow this queen g4 and bishop g5 with e5 pawn. This is too strong attack by white here. Okay, let me step back. Black can try to stop us with f5 move, but f5 move is not good option too because of recapturing en passant. So he takes f6 en passant. Here is a strong move for us here with actually crushing attack. Black can, let me step back. Black can also try to stop us with knight to g6. But knight g6 doesn't stop bishop to g5. We again have bishop to g5 attack here. And finally, if black decides to play bishop to a6, we actually have a winning move here. Bishop now not g5, but h6. Pawn on g7 is pinned, and there are no much options here to survive here. g6 is not an option because we can take the rook on f8. We can, of course, first play also bishop takes a6, and we have a good attack here. And we can actually pretty easily simplify with material advantage here. Okay, I step back. To the move number 7. So short castle was not an option at all for black in this position. Maybe the best another option instead of king f8. We have already seen that king f8 is a solid move for black here. Another option is now immediately not going for short castle, but immediately stopping us with knight g6. But after knight g6, we again have h4 move, threatening to play h5. So the only good option for black here is now to stop that and playing h5 on his side. So h5 by black here. And now we need to retreat with the queen, and the best square for with the queen, and the best square for the queen is g3, staying on g file with some future threats on g7. So queen g3 is played here. Okay, and finally the last option here for black here on the move number 6 is c5, and actually c5 is the main line here, but I will not cover that because we will come to the same position from immediate c5 from immediate c5 on the move number 4. So we will now go back to the move number 4, and we will see the main line c5 on the move number 4. So here on a move number 4, instead of knight to e7, which was also the main line, maybe even better for black is to play c5. So black to c5 is the move. So how to play here? We will not capture on c5. That is not the best option. The best option is to chase the bishop, to play a3, attacking the bishop on b4. So we play a3. And now black has several options. Actually, 3 playable options which we can encounter in our games. First one is instead of retreating with the bishop or taking on c3, black can counterattack with pawn takes d4. So pawn takes d4 can black play. Of course, our knight is pinned, so we don't have much options here. The only good one is to take the bishop now. So we take the bishop. Of course, black will take the knight with the pawn. Pawn takes c3. And now actually we can either immediately go with again with the queen to g4, but I recommend that we first simply that we don't go for complications, but that we first retake on c3. So b takes c3 is my recommendation here. Okay, I will step back to the move number 5. So instead of taking on d4, another 2 options are to retreat with the bishop to a5 or to take on c3. So if bishop a5, we will further going with active play with immediate b4 move. It seems that actually we are losing the pawn this way, but let me see what happens after b4. After b4, black will take either pawn on with will take with the c pawn either here, pawn takes b4, or pawn takes d4. We will first cover the variant after pawn takes b4. So if pawn takes b4, we will now not take with the pawn because we will be a pawn up, but the reason why we could play this is actually a very strong move, knight to b5. We save our uh, knight, and actually we are threatening both to play later on c7 if allowed, or knight d6 check, where we are protected by the pawn on e5. So this should be remembered. So here, not taking on b4, but playing knight b5. After knight b5, most variations are simply winning for white. Black really needs to defend well here. We will now see if black plays immediately a6, attacking our knight, but we have a nice square for the knight. Knight d, as already discussed, knight d6 check. And again, king to f8 is the only good move for black here. So we step back. If instead black decides to play developing move with the knight, knight to e7, square, we can now take on b4, and after and if black takes with the bishop, a very strong move. The only one but very strong and winning move is c3. So we play c3 here. Other options for black are going with the bishop back to b6, but after bishop b6, I recommend that we go with knight d6 check immediately with very strong attack. And if bishop to c7, which is probably the best move here for the black, by the black, preventing us from playing knight d6, I recommend that we now simply play developing move bishop d3. d3 is a good square for this light squared bishop, putting the pressure on h7 on the king side actually. Okay, we step back and we see what happens if instead of knight e7, black decides to play knight c6, developing move, putting also the pressure on d4 pawn. After this move, I recommend that we go with bishop d2. d4 pawn is protected by the knight on b5, and we are putting further pressure to b4 square. So bishop d2 is here recommended. We step back. Black can try to be tricky and to play b3 check, but we can stop that with c3. c3 is protected by the knight, and we have time to play c3 simply here. We again step back. If instead bishop immediately retreats to c7, of course we can take take the pawn on b4 now, but in this position I recommend that we immediately go with queen to g4 with the attack on g7 square. We can retake later because now black needs to protect g7. Black cannot afford not to protect g7 square here. And black can protect that either with king to f8, and then we will take with the pawn on b4, or black can try to protect with g6, but g6 is not playable. After g6 we have again very strong bishop g5 move. Attacking the queen with possible threat here on f6 later, and so on. Black can also simply forget on g7 and play bishop c7, attacking our knight. Of course, our knight is protected, but some players will maybe play this. And this is really frequently played on amateur level. So bishop c7. And so after, actually, sorry. Yes, bishop bishop c7. Sorry, that was not c7, that was d7, so I misplaced something. So not bishop d7. The move here, which is frequently played by black here, is knight to e7, knight to e7, but this simply forgets on the weak g7 square. We simply take on g7 after this move. Okay. And finally, we step back. If instead black plays last option If black plays pawn takes e3 check. Seems like a good move, but it's not enough because we again have c3. The only move, okay, maybe bishop d2, but c3 is stronger simply here. Okay, we will now go back to the move number 6 and we will cover another option. If instead of taking on b4, which was weaker, black takes correctly on d4. So c takes d4 is the better option for black here. So how to play after c takes d4? Again, we don't need to care about our knight on c3 because we again have queen g4, strong attack on g7 and on the rook, and potentially also the rook on h8. So queen g4 should be played here. Now if bishop retreats to c7, this simply loses because of queen takes g7. Also, if d takes c3, it loses because of queen takes g7. So what can black play at all here? There are several possibilities. Black can save g7 by playing g6. And after g6, I again recommend strong move bishop g5. So bishop g5 should be played here. We step back. After king to f8, we have already seen this move several times. We again have knight b5 move here as a strong option here. So knight b5 is a move here again. And finally, the last option for black is simply to play knight e7. After knight e7, we cannot take on g7. Because now rook g8 is a strong move. And when we take on h7, black actually can retreat safely to c7. And now knight b5 doesn't help because of a6. And we have nothing. We cannot play knight d6 because of the bishop on c7. We can exchange, for example, and after queen takes, actually material is equal. Material is equal, and this is actually a drawish position. Very, very interesting one, and dangerous both for white and black, but drawish position. So we step back. So after knight to e7, we simply take the bishop on a5. And finally, we step back. And we see what happens in the main line if bishop, when attacked by a pawn, simply captures on c3. So bishop takes c3. We of course need to recapture with the pawn. B takes c3. And now there are several options for black. If black takes on a d4, this is good for us because we will retake and retaking also good pawn structure here. If instead black plays c4, the queen side is closed and we are continuing our attack on the king side with queen g4. Okay, and finally, the last few options for black here. If knight c6, we again can play simply queen g4 with our attack to g7 square. We step back. Maybe the most interesting move is queen to h5, attacking our c3 pawn. After that, we need to protect that pawn. We play bishop d2 first. And again, we will have attack on the king side. Of course, if now c takes d4, we need to retake, and actually, again, we have this. We are retaking also the good pawn structure and also with the tempo with attacking the queen on a5. So that is probably not the best option here for black. If knight e7, developing a move, we can again go with queen g4. Although okay, maybe yes, black needs to protect the g7 square. Now even castling is a solid option, but maybe king to f8 the best still. Okay, we step back. If knight c6, this doesn't change much for us. We can again go with queen to g4. Also, after c4, we again can go with queen to g4. King side is closed, and maybe even queen on a5, somewhat misplaced, not very active here. And also black needs to protect again g7 square. And finally, if black plays queen to h at queen a4, this is now a tricky move, but it's not a big threat actually. We can again go with either queen g4 and or maybe, which probably more recommended here, is to play h4, going immediately with the pawn, so to pushing h4. And finally, we step back. If instead of queen a5, black plays plays more passively with the queen c7, we can immediately go again with queen g4. Queen g4 is our main weapon here. And also we step back, maybe knight e7 for black is the main line here. It is the main line and probably the best move, but again we are allowed to play queen g4. And black has several options here, but maybe the best one is again protecting g7 square. Okay, thank you for watching this. As you have seen from this video, it's not easy to play French defense, neither for black, neither for white. In most lines, white will have a slight advantage, but if black plays correctly, it is not easy to convert that advantage at all. We have this queen g4 move frequently, also h4 in many situations, but if black defends well, it is not clear at all how this will go. Thank you for watching. We continue with the Caro-Kann defense in the next video. Bye bye, see you soon.